Thank you very much. So I'm here with Professor Temple Grandin to do the next interview in the series for dog owners that will help them to discover the secrets of dog experts and transform their connection to create the best friend that they've always wanted. I'm so excited that you're here today and to talk to you. Thank you so much. I wanted to say I admire your work very much. I could get involved in it for days easily. It's very interesting and exciting, and great job. I think that it's awesome. And can I'd love to hear a little bit at least about how you got to here, because you've had a very exciting life and journey.
Well, I've been around for a while. One of the things that's helped me with my work with animals is I'm a complete visual thinker. I don't think in words. And I find it hard to believe that there are still some people questioning the consciousness of animals. It's still going on now. And I think it basically gets down to thinking verbally. There are some people that think extremely verbally. And if you think totally in words, you might have a hard time understanding the sensory based world of an animal. Now, when I first started my very first work with cattle, I thought everybody thought in pictures. I didn't know that I thought differently. It wasn't until I got past my 20s and into my late 30s that I finally discovered that some people don't think in pictures. But to understand an animal, it's a sensory based world. And for dogs, one of the big things is a sense of smell. And there are a lot of dogs today that don't have very much time to do a really good doggy social life. I see them getting yanked away from the tree that they want to sniff. And that's sort of like the local coffee shop. Now, COVID's the best thing that's ever happened to pets because they're getting tons of attention. But then when the vaccine comes and, everybody goes back to work, the dog's really going to be lonely. And I had a very interesting Zoom conference with the Humane Society out in the Silicon Bay area. And for some reason, they set their chat up so I could see it, but the audience couldn't. I think they made some kind of a mistake. But it was good for me because there were 400 people on that call, and they kept asking the same questions. And the three questions I kept asking was, my dog's afraid of the vet. My dog home alone has a real problem, separation distress, and he's afraid of thunder and fireworks. And I think some of the problem is a lot of dogs today don't get exposed to enough things. Because when I was a child and our dogs ran around outside, they were never afraid of thunder. We never had that problem.
Yes.
And one of the problems at the vet is just novelty. And I've been working with the Marty Becker on fear free and things to make the trips to the vet clinic a whole lot nicer. Like puppy's first visit needs to be treats.
So important, hey? Yes.
Because it's first experiences that are bad, an animal can get a fear memory. And then the puppy might see the white coat and be afraid of that. But then if the white coat got associated with treats, so maybe one puppy, the white coat's associated with good, and another place associated with bad. But animals, when they get a scary or a painful experience, tend to associate it with something they were either seeing or hearing right there, right when it happened. Usually vision seems to be the big sense, even in dogs, for fear memories.
Yeah, actually, it's funny. I never thought of the white coat syndrome itself, but yeah, I agree. It's true, eh? They really makes more of an impact than we think, than people realize.
Well, it's basically how the puppy associates the white coat. If the good experiences with the white coat were, a lot of treats, and just, you bring the dog in and it's slipping around on the table. I mean, one of the first things you need to do is give the dog a non-slip surface to stand on. And what the person can do is bring a bath mat in from home and put it on the table so the puppy has a non-slip surface. Now, if the first experiences there with a white coat are good, he's going to like white coats. If the first experiences are bad, he's going to hate them. And in my book, Animals in Translation, I talk about, visual thinking and how it relates to, the fear memories. And this can happen with a lot of rescues, like the dog's afraid of baseball hats. And a real common one is he's afraid of men.
Yes.
I unfortunately do tend to make that generalization because quite a few rescue dogs have been abused. And one of the things you want to do with those dogs is when he's cowering in the corner, that's not when you pet him. Wait until he does one little bit of positive behavior, like a little tail wag, and reward him for the confident behavior. For confident behavior, rather than scaredy, afraid behavior.
I'm just writing that down. Yes, yes. It's that's,
Reward them for the confident behavior.
and people, if they work on that stuff, right, to make it good experiences right from the beginning.
But I think a lot of dogs just don't get exposed to enough stuff because they seem like be afraid of things they didn't used to be afraid of before. And I think the problems at the veterinarian have gotten worse. And I think part of that problem is the dogs that, you know, they get walked around the block and they don't experience all the different new things that the dogs in my childhood would have experienced.
Yeah, they're just walking, right? They're not going and doing different things.
Well, they
Right?
don't
They're not.
socialize with enough of the dogs and they just don't see enough stuff. And the other thing, when I was a child, all the dogs were brought in at night into the house, but in the daytime, they ran around and visited with their doggy friends. We had very few fights, very few behavior problems.
Isn't that interesting how different,
because
eh?
they were socialized. Also, we didn't have people deliberately breeding nasty dogs. That was not happening too. But
Yes.
the behavior, if the dog bit somebody when I was a child in the 50s, parents go, "What did you do to it?" That's the first thing. Parents assume that somebody did something to it. But I think that, you know, animals that don't get exposed to enough new things just get afraid of everything new. And we've had that with cattle too. Some of the worst cattle that go berserk when they go to a new place, like a sale barn or maybe another ranch or a feed yard, are the ones where it was one person, one old truck. That's all they experienced.
So they didn't
the
know.
ones that have experienced more different vehicles, different people walking around. I always tell people they're showing an animal because they'll say, "Oh, he's fine at home. He went crazy at the show." Well, he's got to get used to strange people touching him, different strange vehicles, balloons, flags.
Going places even.
Yeah, and going places. And you know, the dogs that see a lot of stuff, they want to go jump in the pickup.
Yeah.
Another dog might be afraid of getting in the car.
I don't remember, I've just, because you mentioned that, I'm sure dogs used to always love going in the car. And now I'm hearing more people saying that their dogs don't even want to go in the car.
Well, that used to never be an issue. You see, and I think some of it is not getting exposed to enough stuff. So they're just afraid of everything because they don't.
Confidence.
Yeah, no confidence. And thunder phobias did not exist when I was a child. And dogs had social manners. So it was a really interesting thing that happened in my neighborhood. We had a golden retriever, and then he was Andy. And then there was another golden retriever that lived 2 houses away named Lightning. And Lightning was dominant over Andy. But Andy would go over to Lightning's house. Nobody made him do this. Lay down, do the little submissive thing. Lightning would stand over him, and then they'd go play. And Andy would go over there on his own. But they just, they had to do the little dominance thing. There was no snarling or anything. He would just roll over and Lightning stand over him, and then they went and played.
And they were friends.
Well, but as long as they did their little thing first. And Andy went there. No one made him go there.
No, he wanted to go. Yeah. They seem to like that, right? Like the dominance.
They've learned, okay, there's a peck order. They've learned the give and take of social relations. And the animals that are worse on fighting, any animal, are the ones that are reared alone. They've never learned the give and take of social relationships. You don't have to keep fighting unless you sort of got your order in the peck order. I've seen that with dogs, I've seen it with horses, and I've seen that with cattle. Animals reared by themselves.
Yeah, it's hard for them when they're by themselves. I'm just writing that down there.
Well, they're social animals. And one of the things that's going to happen when COVID finally gets stopped with a vaccine is now the dogs are going to have to be home alone again. I was just listening to a thing on the radio just now, and I didn't get who was doing it. I just heard part of it, but they were saying basically you need to start training your dog to tolerate some time away from you so that when the vaccine does come, he's not just all of a sudden just left home alone and freaking out now.
And it's kind of been going in little waves of that too, right? Like as COVID lifted, everybody was talking about separation anxiety. Now it's kind of slowed down, and then it's going to come back again. Like it's something that people need to think about all the time.
Well, when the vaccine gets there, and it's going to take quite a few months to get everybody vaccinated, and everybody's going back to work and everything, and the dog's home alone again. Because I've walked through the subdivision. This is way before COVID started. It was when I was working on this book, Animals Make Us Human, my other book.
I like that.
I at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, when the subdivision's deserted, I'm hearing dogs barking and whining in the houses. And I'm just on the sidewalk and I can hear them.
They should need people, hopefully people.
There were no people home. Everybody was at work. It was 3 o'clock in the afternoon during the week. Nobody was home.
I'm hoping people now are going to take advantage. Will take advantage of being home, like you said, right? This is their opportunity for dogs.
No, I mean, the dogs have never had so many walks. But eventually this is going to get over with. And when people start going to work, one thing that was suggested, was being suggested, I heard on the radio, was, teach your dog, okay, we're going to take a little walk without him for a little bit, or we're going to take a little trip to the supermarket or something and gradually get them used to more time alone. But the thing is, there's a lot of dogs, I don't think they have a very good life. They're locked up in a crate for most of the day. Get out for a 15-minute walk. That's not much life.
No, that's not much fun at all.
No, it's
that's
not.
Not an ideal life for a.
The dogs in my childhood had a great life. The only downside was quite a few dogs were killed by cars. That was the downside.
Yeah.
But I think they had a better quality of life. They played with all the neighborhood kids, and we had some rules about dogs. Don't touch dogs you don't know. Don't pet dogs you don't know. Don't bother them when they're eating, and don't wake them up suddenly.
Those are very good rules.
Those were the 3 rules that we had. And when I was in elementary school, there was a little terrier that used to come over to the soccer field, and we named him Flea. I don't think he had fleas. And Flea was welcome at our schoolyard. Today, somebody'd have a fit if the dog came on the athletic field. No, Flea was welcome to come, and he came over to school every day. And we don't know who owned them. It's just somebody around in the area. It's
a very different world, isn't it? It's changed so much.
There's 2 books I really like. There's Elizabeth Marshall Thomas, The Hidden Life of Dogs.
Okay. Oh, I think I've heard of that one.
What she did, she followed a dog around that, went around town. Then there's Merle's Door by Ted Karasote. And these dogs had a whole life.
It's very different. There was a dog growing up. There was a dog that used to live on the street 1 block away, and we have many memories of that dog. It came to my house and we hung out, and it used to go down the street and meet its owner when he came home on the bus.
Yeah, and we had now I've been to when we're going to the Philippines years ago, and there were mangy street dogs, and she'd had a jillion puppies. That's awful. All of our female dogs were spayed in the 50s. Males were intact. Females were all spayed. So we didn't have puppies all over the place. But then when I went down to places like Chile, there's sort of semi-owned dogs wait very politely in front of a shop, a meat shop. Oh. They knew they weren't allowed in there. Wait beside the door. Hopefully that someone will come out and give them a treat. Very polite. They knew they were not allowed in the stores.
They're really smart, eh?
Yeah.
I know, because I can't seem to find the note I had earlier here, but I know you mentioned something else just while you were talking, because one of my favorite things to do with my dogs and to try and use their brain and to give them something to do sometimes, or you can say a lot of things, but either way, they really like it, is using their nose, right?
Yep.
I use snuffle mats, and I have a Kongish toy I use sometimes, but sometimes I hide their food in toys and stuff. But I thought I would see if you had any other ideas. There's just so many things you can do that are fun with your dog.
We've bred dogs to be really hypersocial. We've bred them to be that way. They need people. They need other dogs. They're very, very social. They also have personalities, because when the dogs all ran free in my childhood, there were 2 Labrador retrievers, black labs, that lived next door to each other. Tucky, skinny, frisky, high energy. All she wanted you to do was throw the tennis ball. All she wanted you to do. And Hunter, heavy set, like a service dog type, he could care less about the ball. He'd always come around, he'd be friendly, and Tucky'd be dropping the ball repeatedly in front of you to get you to throw it. Hunter could care less about the ball. And they lived right next door to each other in the same environment. Now I'm thinking about Tucky She was owned by an older couple. If she'd been locked up in that house, she would have been crazy.
Yes.
She would have been crazy, super high energy. She would, she just wouldn't stop. You could throw the ball 20 times. She still hadn't had enough.
It's hard on them, right? I worked with border collie rescue and stuff, and I did see a lot of animals that really had the side effect, right? Of not getting what they needed and being locked up. And
Hunter would be a perfect service dog. He was totally unathletic. I never hardly saw that dog run. And they lived next door to each other. So in the same environment, playing with the same kids, and two totally different dogs.
Yeah, it's funny you talk about retrievers. They're nice, such nice dogs, eh? They make a very good pet.
Well, they were both really good pets.
Really nice.
But they were very different in their need for, Tucky was absolutely tennis ball crazy. And Hunter, he could care less about the ball. I don't think I ever saw him chase a ball. He'd just sort of walk around, he'd wag his tail a little bit, and he'd be there with the kids.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Be there.
I know there definitely can be. It's amazing how different they can each be, right?
Totally different.
Sometimes you have to put energy into figuring out, like you say, one will like a ball and one won't, or if they will like a toy.
The other thing I'm worried about in dogs is breeding for extreme traits. This is something that really worries me. Bulldog can't breathe, can't walk, has to have its babies by cesarean. And you look at the breed standard and it says massive head. I've looked it up. Well, where do you stop on massive head? Because if you go on Google Images and you type in Bulldog's Dilemma, you will find a picture of a 1938 Bulldog. He's got a snout about that long. He's got some legs. He's totally different. How did you get to what we got now? That's what I call bad becoming normal. It happens slowly and people don't realize it. You want to see another nasty thing? It's an Arabian horse with an extreme dish face. You type extreme Arabian horse in, you can find that. Yeah, a little dish face is pretty. An extreme dish face is a freak that's going to have trouble breathing.
Wow. You know what? I never thought about it with horses. I guess I've only thought of it with dogs.
Well, I only found out about the horses like about 4 years ago. When I first saw the pictures, I was just horrified. But you overselect for any trait, whether it's an appearance trait, a performance trait like a racehorse, or a meat or production trait for a dairy cow or a beef animal, you are going to wreck your animal.
Yeah, they're messing with nature.
It's just that simple. It doesn't matter what the trait is. You overselect for any trait, you wreck your animal. But the problem is it happens slowly. And they'll go, well, that's normal for the breed, for the bulldog. And I go, no. Why don't you go back and look at that picture? Bulldog's Dilemma.
Well, I always think of pugs too, right? Like pugs are
Same thing. I've seen pugs so flat. I went to do a talk at a veterinary college several years ago, and they brought in a pug that was so flat that it had sinus surgery and it still snorted. And it was as flat as a board.
I wonder if how many people actually know much about it when they get them, because it's so, everybody thinks they're cute, but it's a health concern.
Well, I don't know. I look at it and I think it's, I think it's kind of informed. I have problems with that.
Yes.
With breeding animals that start to have stuff wrong with them. You can go overboard on meat traits and get lameness in cattle. It's purely leg conformation.
Wow.
You go overboard on any trait. And I'm going to bash pets. The bulldog's about the worst example of that.
Yes. I have a friend that has one from rescue, and yeah, she had like litters and litters and litters, and it's just crazy. They just wear them out. They don't care.
No, that's just terrible. No, one of the things in the 50s, all the dogs in our neighborhood, the females were spayed. They were not having puppies all over the place. That was not happening.
And you said that you didn't usually neuter the males. It was just the females were.
The males were intact in the 50s. All our dogs all those dogs were intact. And then the way people normally did it is you kept them in at your house at night. You got them in at night.
Oh.
That was sort of the normal thing. And then they ran loose during the day and they'd come in around 5 to get fed. And then we kept them in.
Do you mind me asking, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Dedham, Massachusetts, which was kind of a suburban area, but across the street from where I lived, there was a farm. There was some woods around. The dogs would go down in that. It was suburban with some open land around it.
It sounds nice. I was looking at your cattle stuff. I find that some of us dog people end up with similar interests. I know I used to hang out with the cows when I was young, and I'm from a city, but I always felt like they communicated, and the same with the horses,
Oh yeah, they
it's
cattle have a social life. Ranchers, one of the things that ranchers got kind of shocked with, well, years ago they came out with sequentially numbered ear tags, where they
yeah.
were printed, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and they put those in the cattle. And then they were shocked when the cows came back to the chute next year. It was almost in the same order.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
That's
and
interesting.
and sisters were raised together.
Wow.
They form their social groups.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Very, very definitely.
I definitely got attached to some cows in my life. I can think of it right away. It doesn't take
Well, another
much.
little tip: the mistake that people make is they pat animals like this, stroke it. Don't pat its hitty.
And I also saw you talking about reaching over and hugging. I'd love to hear you say
Well, the
that
thing
too.
is that in humans and of course primates, hugging around the shoulders, that's like lovey, really nice. But in dogs, that's a dominance thing. It's not so nice. Now, if you look at kids hugging dogs, I mean, or at pictures of people hugging dogs around the shoulders, they're tolerating, but the mouth will be clamped shut. Just look at the pictures. The animal emotions and our emotions are similar, but there are some species specific differences. Now, if you hug it around the waist, a little further back, it's probably not going to trigger it. And animals definitely do have emotions, and
Yeah.
that's all mammals is pretty much the same. You've got fear, then you've got anger or rage, then you've got separation distress, and that's a separate emotion from fear. They're not the same thing. Then you have the urge to explore. Tucky would have been a high seeker, high seek. Hunter would have been a low seek. Then you have sex, of course. Then you've got the mother young nurturing, licking, and nurturing, and then you've got play. And these are the 7 basic emotions, first written up by Jack Penskep. And I'm a big fan of Jack Penskep. And I talk about those emotional systems in Animals Make Us Human. And both genetics and experience will affect these emotions.
Yes. You make so much sense. I love it. Yeah, I think that dogs are quite amazing animals, and um, I think that I would like people to take a look at that, to think about that, to take a look at their dog and understand that they are speaking.
Well, in some animals, when they're home alone, are more needy than others.
Yes.
Now, where the
Yes.
thunder shirt tends to help is on the separation distress more than the thunder. Camille King, a really good friend of mine and colleague, she did a study on a thunder shirt. I helped her design the study. Uh, and basically, she left the dog up in a kennel alone with a video camera and a heart rate monitor on it. And the Thundershirt dog's heart rate was a bit lower, and they spent less time staring at the door waiting for Camille to come back. Then the controls, they put Thundershirt on. It's like 2 sizes too big, so they
Okay.
controlled the clothes, but it didn't have the pressure. And but the
Doesn't give
separation
that.
distress, I think, did more good for that than maybe for the Thunder.
Sorry, I say that again. I interrupted you there.
The Thunder shirt or the pressure garment seemed to do more good for the separation distress. It did more good for that than it did for the being scared of thunder.
Okay. Thunder shirts are amazing, and I actually haven't thought about them in a while, but I kind of feel like they're a hug.
Yeah,
Hey?
and they are helpful. And another study Camille did is she noticed in her animal behavior practice that a lot of dogs were prematurely turning gray. And so I helped her develop a little gray scale for their snout. None, front only, half the muzzle, whole muzzle. And she made a dog style survey with a lot of decoy questions. And then she took a picture of the dog so we'd get the gray thing. And then it would have questions in there that mattered, like home alone, impulsive, jumping on people, hyper, I can't stand being home alone. The dogs that scored high on the hyper, the home alone, impulsivity were more likely to turn gray by age 4.
There you go. Do you know what? I have a young dog he was taken to be put to sleep, and I ended up he came here to foster, and he's my foster fail, but he was taken to be put to sleep for biting. He's turned gray. On his snout, and he's only maybe 3.
That's stress. That's stress. It's Camille King. If you want to look it up on Camille King on Google Scholar, if you probably put in Grandin, King, and dogs, you'll find this Gray study. You'll find a Thundershirt study that I'll want to give. Camille did all the work on this. I just helped mainly with reviewing the paper and developing the methods for the project. And then there's another study that I did with one of my former graduate students, Krista Coppola, and we looked at how stressed out dogs were getting at the animal shelter. So the controls just got stuck in a cage the regular way, but the experimentals got to have a 45-minute fun time with Krista. And then the next day they tested salivary cortisol. And the ones that had a fun time with Krista the day before had lower salivary cortisol. But what that tells you is you've got to do it every day, because it went back up again because they didn't keep doing it. So what do dogs in shelters need? They need a volunteer to come in every day, take them out for 45 minutes of a good time. And then someone says, well, can you do 30 minutes? I don't know. This experiment was 45 minutes. And I've talked to shelters that have a really good volunteer program, and I've been in them, and you don't have all the barking when you've got a really good volunteer program of taking them out every day.
It's it's hard, It's hard to get, it's hard to get volunteers.
Well, that's just it. But I've been in some very good places that have done that. I think Best Friends is one of them. And they,
stress.
They have to work hard to get people to come in and do it.
Yes. Yeah. That's so interesting.
And I've been in really crappy animal shelter with the pens face each other and it's chain link badness. But you know what? They had a great volunteer program.
That makes a difference.
It makes a difference. So if I had a choice between, okay, let's say just chain link plain, like the one that Krista did her experiment in, but a super good volunteer program, or super fancy facility, but I don't have the good volunteer program, I'll take the okay facility, not a junkyard, but they're just okay or adequate facility with the super good volunteer program. Take every dog out every day for a good time.
Yeah, no, what a difference, eh?
See, people always want the thing more than they want the management. And when I was very young, I used to think I could fix cattle stuff if I could build facilities that would manage themselves. No, you got to have the management with the facility.
What did you say? What did you say again?
People want, like I've had people come to me about designing an animal shelter. They want to build some palace, and that's fine. But I said, what are you going to do for your volunteer program? Well, there's a few basic things. Let's get cats and dogs at opposite ends of the building and don't face the pens towards each other. Those are 2 basic things. Make it easy to clean. But they were talking about, we put in all this noise attenuation material. Well, if you have a good volunteer program, maybe they won't bark as much and don't need all the noise attenuation material.
Yeah.
See, this is where people wanting the magical thing rather than all the details of managing something really right.
They want the magical thing, but don't want to manage it.
Oh yeah, but people think, we get this computer system, all our problems are solved. Or we get this drug and it solves all our problems. Or we get some new corral, or we get a new animal shelter. It'll just fix everything. Now you have to have at least adequate. You see, and I'm involved with writing animal welfare guidelines of farm animals. You have broken everything all over the place. Yeah, you're going to fail an audit over that.
Yeah.
It has to be at least what I'm going to call adequate. And that means non-slip flooring and stuff not busted and clean. It has to be clean and well maintained.
It's hard. I took care of, I have worked in a boarding facility for a while, and they were kennels, right? They couldn't see each other through, but it was big and stuff. And as long as they got, like you say, as long as we were taking them for their runs, they got at least 3 runs a day, in a big area. And if they got along, they could go together, whoever.
Well, that's just it. And dogs need other dogs.
Yeah.
And all that barking is a lot of that's some dogs were frantic, like the animal shelter Krista did a study at. So a dog went up through the suspended ceiling,
Oh,
got inside the suspended ceiling, and came down into the room where the feed was.
no.
There's a lab report.
That might have been on purpose.
Well, that was a mess. He whole lot of stuff and tore it up.
They can be, they can really panic though. So it's, and
Oh
it
no,
only
I heard
takes
about somebody
one.
left a dog in a car one time, and the dog ate the inside of the car completely, just completely.
And it wouldn't take long if they were stressed and scared to do that,
Well, it was a
right?
couple of hours, and the inside of the car was completely wrecked. He ripped the stuffing out of the seats and tore down the fabric on the roof, bit the sun visors, bit the steering wheel. The car was drivable afterwards, and that's about all you could say for it.
No, that would actually, I do remember a young guy doing that, leaving his dog in his car, and it was, I don't know, some sort of a bully breed, about 9 months old, and it chewed up the stick shift, the whole area. Yeah, that's what you get for leaving your dog in your car,
Well, this
right?
dog destroyed the inside of a car.
But they're just stressed and they just
Or
want
they
help.
destroy the inside of a house. I've seen videos where the dog had bit the wooden shutters on the windows.
That's why hopefully we can get people working with their dogs and start working on, like you said, this separation
Well,
anxiety
the
idea
thing is,
now.
well, you see now with COVID, the dogs are getting lots and lots of attention, but COVID's going to end as soon as the vaccines get completely out there. And then how is the dog going to handle it? And I'm sorry, unfortunately, I was driving when the radio was on. I didn't get who was the interview was with, but I just heard him talking about the problem of it was an NPR show that when COVID stops, the dogs are going to be home alone again. They're going to really feel bad because the person isn't. People aren't there going to be there all the time. The kids will be back in school and the parents will be working.
Yeah, boy, it's going to be interesting to see. Well, that's why I'm really hoping, to try and help people through this with this series and get people connecting with their dog and, thinking about this stuff, right? Like maybe a thunder shirt, it sure made a difference in my
But
one little dog when just
well,
having
thunder
that on.
shirt, thing with the thunder shirt doesn't totally replace people.
No.
I had somebody call me up one time. They had a standard poodle and it was like totally hyper. And I said, you need to get one of those ball throwing plastic things to throw the ball with. And he needs about 30 minutes of good hard ball throwing every day. And I don't think it'll be as hyper.
Yeah.
As a visual thinker, I'm seeing Tucky now. She used to jump this little 3-foot fence like it wasn't even there and come back and then jump it to come back to get the ball. I don't know what she would have done to that house if she'd been in there all day. The older couple that owned her, and they just let her out in the morning and she played with all the neighborhood kids. And Hunter was right there. He was the next door neighbor. Hunter would just sort of walk around and wag his tail. He was always there.
Do you have any dogs now? You must have dogs.
And
no?
I was up until March when COVID started, I was traveling 85, 90% of the time.
Oh,
See,
wow.
now I'm thinking, well, what happens when I go back out on the road? They've canceled a lot of my speaking engagements, or they've gone on to Zoom, or they're postponed. I've had a lot of stuff postponed to a year. So what happens when I go back out on the road? And that's exactly what they were talking about on this radio show. And they're really concerned, and the dogs are going to be.
Everybody's getting dogs right now. And then, they're getting dogs.
I'm traveling. And this is the problem. We've bred them to be super, super social in a way that the wolf is not. Okay. Dogs want to please us. And there's been some very interesting work done by Gregory Burns. And I will have to be going in about 5 minutes, but I want to tell you about Gregory Burns' research. He trained dogs. He's at Emory University. And he trained the dogs to lay still in an MRI scanner. It takes a lot of hot dogs and a lot of patience. Train a dog to voluntarily go in an MRI scanner, lay still. And he found that when the dogs smelled their favorite person, the reward centers lit up. And the other thing he found is some dogs respond better to praise, and some dogs respond better to hot dog rewards. In other words, some dogs, like the best thing in life was a hot dog. And for another dog, the best thing in life was praise. And there was variation in that. There's a scientific article on that. He's got like 100 dogs now he's trained to go in the scanner.
I actually think I stumbled across that recently.
And not all dogs can do it. The scanner makes a lot of noise. If you've ever been in an MRI scanner, I mean, it sounds like a spaceship, weird UFO taking off really loud. So they have to train the dogs to tolerate industrial ear protectors put on, and then they wrap something around the hold, keep these industrial ear protectors like the guys at the airport wear. And they said some dogs are just too noise sensitive, too afraid of new things. They can't train them. It's all done positive reinforcement, and they're not harnessed or anything. They have a little ramp. They go up. They walk in. They lay down. They put their chin on a rubber block that they have, and they say coil. That's the command to stay still. Coil. And they're laying still for 15 minutes. You can look at pictures of it on YouTube. It's the cutest thing.
Well, I think it's very
in the scanner, and he's wagging his tail.
Oh, it's very exciting for dogs. It's a positive reinforcement time and praise, like you say. These good things are happening for dogs right now. It's a good time for dogs, as far as I'm concerned.
It's a good time, but the thing I thought was interesting from a personality standpoint is that some dogs were more food motivated, and other dogs where praise was better than food.
Yes, I agree. I've got one. Her only thing is kryptonite. She's sitting there staring. Her only thing is tuna treats. That's her kryptonite. That's her paycheck. You know, I'll do some for praise, but I need a paycheck, right?
Well, and they'll do stuff, but then I saw about Fear Free at the veterinary clinic, and they have little treats, little packets of like fish stuff, and you like 2 drops of it, and they're going crazy over it. You don't have to feed them very much of it.
Well, I think it's the smell, like we said, right? The smell has a lot to do with it.
You know, eat this stuff. You can also have a really weird mixed emotion. I saw a dog at a vet clinic where the back end, the tail was tucked, and the front end's gobbling the treats up. In the back end, the tail was tucked.
That's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I thought that was real interesting.
It's like a fight in the brain or something.
Well, I think it is a fight in the brain.
Yeah.
The back end was scared, and the front end's gobbling treats. The front end didn't look like there was anything wrong with it at all. No, I think they can have mixed emotions.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's something that they actually can have. But some people, I couldn't believe it, don't know what the tucked tail means.
You know what? It usually seems like something unsure, right? Like scared or unsure.
All scared. If he thinks dogs that are afraid of getting hit will tuck their tail.
Yes.
They've been abused.
Cower.
But this was really weird. It's like one end's afraid and the other end's like very enthusiastically eating the treats on the exam table at a vet hospital.
It's interesting, isn't it?
I thought that was real interesting.
I love learning about the dogs, you know, and I think it's just, like I said, it's a good time for them. I'm so happy that you talked to me. I really, really appreciate this very much.
It's really good to be here, and I want to understand more about visual thinking and animal behavior. Animals in translation, because I get asked all the time, how did autism help me understand animals? I'm just an extreme visual thinker. Words narrate the pictures. As I talk to you about these dogs, I'm seeing the dogs. I'm seeing, it's like little video clips that play. I'm seeing a picture on YouTube of a dog in the MRI scanner wagging its tail. I'm seeing a picture of a little stairway they have for the dogs. So it doesn't have, so the little ones, they don't make them jump up on the scanner. They walk up a little ramp. Everything's voluntary. If they don't want to do it, they don't have to do it.
And we kind of believe that dogs are visual too, right? Dogs don't think in words at all, right?
Or smell. Like imagine the world of smell. And I think the closest that humans could get to that is a wine steward that could identify 2,000 wines by smell. That might be the closest human equivalent. But think about it. When I see someone yanking a dog away from the tray, I said, he wants to check his P-mail. Wants to know, let him check it.
His P-mail.
That's a coffee shop. He wants to know, you see all the gossips on that tree. And I see him just pull them away from you.
And in the wind, right? The wind is always, I always say the wind is talking to the dogs. I always say the wind is telling stories.
Smell it, the things that other dogs have left their mark on.
Yeah, it's amazing. They're pretty awesome. I love where it's going for dogs. Like I said,
but it's a sensory based world. It's not a word-based book. It's sensory-based.
Yes.
So what you have to do is get away from language. And now you communicate emotion, body language, tone of voice. There's been some studies on how dogs bark, and then people were suggested to put emotions on different barks. This is actually a paper.
Even just smiling, eh? I wanted to point that out to people lately, that even just smiling at your dog can make a different reaction.
But
Right?
you
They
see,
know.
chimpanzee, if you show your teeth, that's nasty.
Okay, well, no, I wouldn't do that.
This is where the emotional systems in the brain are the same across people and all mammals, but what they're hooked up to varies some. Where this is love in people, this is dominance in dogs on the shoulder. The emotional, but they're wired differently, and showing the teeth, that's not friendly to chimps.
No.
You see, this is where there's species differences on how things are wired.
It's very fascinating, eh?
No, there's a lot of really interesting things, and animal behavior is an interesting subject. And you know, if your school has a course in it, or your college does, take a class in animal behavior. That's one of the ways that I got interested in it. I got interested in it because I was very fortunate to have a really good professor in animal behavior when I was in college.
Oh.
You see, this brings up another important thing. Students get interested in stuff they got exposed to. I got exposed to the animal behavior class when I was in college. I also got exposed to beef cattle out on Arizona when I was young. So those are two things I was exposed to young that probably had a lot to do with what I eventually got interested in.
The exposure makes a big difference. Yes, when you're young, experience and exposure, and what you know, opportunities that are available. Wow,
Right. You get interested in stuff you get exposed to, or you might get exposed to something and go, you know what, I really don't want to do this.
Yes.
When you think about all the students that get forced to become a doctor or a lawyer, and then they find they hate it.
Yeah, that would not be too. Yeah, that happens. That happens to lots of people, actually, doesn't it?
Well, it happens to tons of people, and a lot of students they want to be a veterinarian because that's the only animal career they get exposed to. So our department, animal science at Colorado State, is prerequisite for veterinarian, and about 75% want to be veterinarians. But then when they get to the junior year, they discover there's all these other interesting careers that you can do with a 4-year degree, like range manager, nutrition, breeding, food safety. There's just a whole bunch of stuff.
Oh, it's just growing.
Well, and they didn't even, but the problem is they didn't even know these careers existed. There's interesting careers that you can do with a 4-year degree.
It's true. Sorry, one of my dogs is digging something.
Well, I'm probably going to have to go because I'm going to have to get on the other meeting. But
yes.
it was great talking to you, and I'm sorry about getting the calendar mixed up.
Don't worry about it. That's okay. And yes, I will be in touch because I definitely would like to get some more information about getting your books that you have there too.
Yeah,
and,
Animals in Translation. Amazon has got them.
Okay.
Animals in Translation, and then Chapters. Your bookstore, you can in Canada, you can get them through Chapters. It's Animals Make Us Human. Animals Make Us Human, and Animals in Translation. Those are my two main books that would have dogs in them.
You've got fantastic work. I think it's awesome, and the world is. I think it's wonderful for the world to have this kind of somebody like you that's looking at this special, bonding and communication, and I really appreciate it. You've done a fantastic job. I thank you so much.
All right. Well, I'm going to sign off now.
Yes.
Because I do have another meeting I've got to get to, and
yep,
going to be expecting me.
Thank you so very much.
All right. I'm signing off. I'm going to leave the meeting.
Okay. Have a great day.
I will. Yeah. Bye.
Bye-bye. Well, that was a fantastic meeting with Professor Temple Grandin. I loved her knowledge and sharing. Thanks for watching. It's all about the dogs.